And the guy did. He popped up about, a couple feet to the right with an RPG, let one fly, and it hit a couple feet behind my seat and just in front of the main fuel tanks on the left side. And the edge of the mountain is right here, a several thousand-foot drop. So I just nosed down the mountain. Well, in that time that as I lifted off and rotated, Neil Roberts, Navy SEAL, had been shot in the thigh, and he fell out. And the gunner back there grabs him, like in the movies. I got you, but he gets pulled right out. Both of them fall about 12 feet.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served warzone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we hear the combat story of a longtime aviator and CH-47 and MH-47 Chinook pilot who spent years in the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, or SOAR, Alan Mack. Alan served over 35 years in the Army and retired with 6,700 flight hours, including 3,200 hours in NVGs as a CW-5. Not an easy accomplishment. Alan survived an aircraft shootdown and multiple near-death experiences in his time in uniform as well. He was part of iconic operations, including Desert Shield and Desert Storm, Operations Anaconda and Redwings, and many more, including others he can't discuss because they remain classified, and he has 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 3 Bronze Stars, a Legion of Merit, and 10 Air Medals, including 1 with Valor. His nickname was the Stache, which is almost a requirement for a combat aviator to have an impressive mustache. But sadly, that mustache is now gone, as you'll see on our video. But I have confirmed with my old flight school roommate, Robert, who served with Alan, that the nickname was indeed the Stache. Alan's book, Razor 03, A Night Stalker's Wars, chronicles so much more of his experiences in the elite special operations community for those who are left wanting more. And I hope you enjoy this perspective from inside the cockpit of a Chinook for the first time, where we dive deep into some of the aviation psychology, personalities, and configurations as much as I did. Alan, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time to share your story with us.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
It's always fun to have another aviator on here. We had just done an interview with Steve Lapping, who is another former 160th guy on the guns and the MH-6 side. We've never had a Chinook pilot on here, so I know them well just from my time in flight school, but I'm super excited to expose the audience to this other part of the aviation community, both the obviously on the special ops side with 160th and the conventional side. And people can see behind you Razor 3, A Night Stalker's Wars, the book that you've written that's out there. So
famously placed where you can see it.
For sure, as it should be. And I'm just glad we get these stories out there now. Like I still remember reading Black Hawk Down when in the 90s, right when it came out, and it's like, oh my God, I've never even heard of this 160th thing, and it was so prominently featured there. So I think this is going to probably inspire a whole new generation of pilots down the road. So thank you for writing it.
Oh, my pleasure. And I hope people do get something out of it. I mean, really, there's a lot in there from, combat exploits to the people I worked with, and the personalities, and of course, family successes and tragedies.
And I think all those are important in the books that we have that people write, and we'll dig into some of it. But I know we'll leave people wanting more. So that's the book if you want to get it, Razor 3. I wanted to start with kind of the personality of a Chinook driver, going back to what bumper hitching is. If this is something common for all lift pilots in their childhood, if you could share what bumper hitching is for people.
Yeah. So we were talking earlier about things that may relate to childhood or from childhood that might relate to my military behavior. And one of the things I mentioned was bumper hitching, right? So I grew up in New Hampshire, so I'm a New Englander, and every self-respecting New Englander knows how to bumper hitch, which is it snows, obviously. School is canceled the next day, so we're out that night. And remember, there's no internet at this time. There's nothing to do. Your parents let you just go out, and as long as you come back by some reasonable hour, they don't call the cops. And you find a car that stops at a stop sign. You run up behind it at a crouch. You kind of squat down behind it and grab a hold of the bumper, And when they take off, you just hold on, right? And you hitch a ride as far as you can go. And unless you hit a manhole cover with no snow, or you get scared and just let go, then you start, tumbling and sliding down the road. And the particular incident I was telling you about, there were some police officers that obviously were younger guys and knew what we were doing. And they kept coming, and they didn't arrest us, but they grab us and they'd sit us in the car and like, look, guys, this is very unsafe. You can't do this anymore. Yes, sir. Yes, officer. Okay. All right, go home, right? They let us out. They drive off. So we just go to a different street and we start doing it again. And of course, they had to have done this in their youth because they're waiting for us. They're anticipating. So think of the enemy situation, where you're trying to sneak around some mountains in a helicopter, and you have to imagine, where you reverse plan where the enemy could be. Like, so they're sitting there going, okay, if I were going to see a helicopter and shoot at it, where would I hide? And then, when you're flying, you try to avoid them. But yeah, that's bumper hitching. And it was a lot of fun. Probably is very stupid. If anybody is out there thinking of doing it right now, don't do it. It was,
that's why I'm bringing it up, because I wonder how many pilots, people who went on to be pilots, would look back and be like, yeah, I would probably do that if I grew up where there was snow.
Oh, I guarantee it. You get some guy from Arizona, because when I was enlisted, I was in Fort Bliss, Texas. It was one of my assignments as an aircraft mechanic. I was a proper noter guy, and it snowed up in New Mexico, and so we drove up to New Mexico to have a snowball fight, of all things, right? So these guys, I was the only one from a snowbound area. Everybody else was from, somewhere else that never got snow. And luckily it was within driving distance. And we did a little bumper hitching just using my car. I was like, all right, here's how you do it. Hang on, So yeah, I think everybody at least in aviation, probably the armor guys, love that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And you mentioned that you were enlisted before, and I think, and we'll kind of bounce around timeline wise.
Yeah.
But you were on the aviation side while you were enlisted, as you mentioned, and it's not an uncommon path to go from that crew chief mechanic working on an aircraft into the cockpit, right?
Yeah. And that's exactly what the recruiter told me to do. So I, at high school, I said, hey, I want to fly helicopters. I've seen the commercials, high school to flight school. And the guy was like, whoa, slow down here. Here's how this works. He goes, you can do it, but it's very unlikely. He goes, why don't you join, be an aircraft mechanic, get used to the environment and the culture, and, learn some things. And then once you feel comfortable, put in, and you're likely to get picked up. And though that was a recruiter spiel, so he'd get his quota, it was true. So he didn't lie to me. He just swayed the truth in his quota. And so I did 9 years, Korea, El Paso, Texas, West Germany. So I was in Mannheim, when the wall was still up. And when I was in flight school, the wall came down. So I had done some trips across into East Berlin. It was eye-opening.
That's awesome. Neat. What aircraft were you working on?
I was, since I was a general aircraft mechanic, I worked on everything. So when I was in Korea and Fort Bliss, I was in cavalry units, and these were H series TO&E, right? So that's, I want to say 21 aircraft or so. So you get like 9 Cobras, 9 Hueys, and whatever 58s are left over, and they were Alpha Charlies back then. And was interesting, when I was in Korea, they were MC Cobras, S model MCs, right, which had the 20 millimeter cannon. And when I went to Fort Bliss from there, they actually had there were AH-1 prods, which were a minigun and a chunker, a little 40 millimeter on the front. So it was actually an older version of the aircraft, but it had a neat package there. And out of Germany, it was Hueys and 58s, because I was in a VIP unit, and a little bit of work on C-12s and U-21 fixed wings.
So it's interesting, actually. I think it was Steve Lappin was saying that he got the same pitch from the recruiter, and he's like, nope, I'm going straight in. I'm just doing the high school to flight school thing. But and so I don't know if you ever think back to like, maybe I should have done that straight in and spent more time in the cockpit. But I do feel like, from what I saw in the aviation community, the people who were crew chiefs before have such an advantage once you get into flight school, and just understanding the airframe and how to interact in an aviation unit, in particular with the crew chiefs.
Right. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I had going for me is that because I had worked on UH-1s for so many years, that and that's what I learned in was UH-1s. Right? They'd just gotten rid of the TH-55, little toy helicopter, and they went with the Hueys. So when it came to systems, like hydraulics, electrical, I knew it all. I knew where everything was. If you pointing at the air, what's this? What's that? The IP is trying to make you understand the systems. I already knew it, so I could study things like aeromedical or airspace or regulations. So my roommate, who was an Apache guy, Frank Lancaster, I don't know if you ever ran into him, but he he was struggling with the systems, and I would be able to just say, hey, here's how it goes, and in the meantime I'm studying all that stuff that other than that. So
They must have hated you.
No, yeah, and here's the thing. Because of that, I was the honor grad for the class. I had a class like 71 or 73, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it was in the 70s. And the top 5 of us were within points of each other. We had like averages of 99.1, 99.2, 99.3. So it was always coming down to whatever test that to see who would move up and down in the order of merit, which was important later on in flight school, because when they had 2 Chinook slots, they went to the number 1 and 2 in the class, and I just happened to be there. So,
jeez. So you had mentioned on the enlisted side that you did not work on Chinooks, and yet you took it as your first choice coming out of the gates. What was the decision there?
Not really. No. You see, here's what happened. So I wanted Hueys, right? Because when I was growing up, the Vietnam War was, in full swing, and the evening news always had helicopters zipping around, right? So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do assault, cavalry work, that kind of thing. And so I was happy when I originally got Hueys, right? So I started in Hueys, and then I went Huey track,
okay,
lift track they call it. And then at the end, the Army in its wisdom, I'm being sarcastic there, all of the Chinook pilots in the Army were very old, W3s and W4s. 5s didn't exist at the time. And, the Chinooks were a reward for somebody who had gone to Vietnam once or twice in Hueys or Cobras. And then you got to fly Chinooks, a much more advanced aircraft. And then even if you went back to Vietnam, it was generally, ash and trash and that kind of stuff. So when I got Chinooks, I was mad. And I remember like, I don't want Chinooks. They go from airport to airport. It's boring. I want to be an assault. And I remember my instructor just looking at me like, you're a moron. It's like, just take the job, right? Like, okay, so I did it. And once I started flying, it was like, oh, this is really cool, And then the instructor pilots in the Chinook track would tell me, oh yeah, you get to do this and this, and I was like, oh, this is cool stuff. Like artillery raids, are really cool. And obviously, I moved on to the 160th years later, and then you're using helicopter, Chinooks in what they call a heavy assault role, which is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, you got to do the assaulting, no doubt, with that. What I guess I'm not tracking. If you had the first 2 pick, you had the first pick there. What were there no Hueys? Like, had that option gone away?
No. So well, that was the thing, right? So I got my helicopter of choice was Hueys. The 60s, I think we only had 6 slots for 60s, and that was so new, nobody really wanted it. You still wanted to fly Cobras or Hueys, and so Chinooks weren't even in the mix. That's what I was saying about being a senior thing. And then I never finished my thought, I guess, which was everybody retired at the same time, kind of what you're seeing in the airline industry now.
Yeah.
And so they needed somebody to fill those roles, and all you got left really is some W1s out of flight school, which is it's like sacrilege. You can't have a WOJG, in a Chinook unit. So the only metric they had was grade point average. So they just looked at the next class. All right, we have 2 slots for Chinooks. Give me the number 1 and 2 guy, and off we go. And that's kind of now they have a Chinook track, but they didn't back then.
Can you, just for people who aren't familiar with the term WOJG, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So as I understand it, I mean, it's a term of endearment or hazing, depending on how it's used.
Depending on who's delivering it.
Right. Yeah. And whether you're being told, hey, WOJG, get the trash, hey, WOJG, stock the fridge, or I'll take the WOJG on this flight, that kind of thing. But I believe when the warrant officer started flying, right, because they originally were mine layers or something like that, mine technicians, and then in Vietnam when they decided to do the warrant officer flight program, I think there was only two warrant officer grades. There was CW2 and warrant officer junior grade, WOJG, WOJ. Yeah.
Woj.
Yeah. So then, now we're up to 5 warrant officer ranks. So you kind of lose the why. It wasn't really an insult to be called a WOJ when there was only 2 ranks. You were just a junior guy, or you were a chief warrant officer. And now it's kind of like you don't even stay at W1 for long anymore. When I went through, it was you were a candidate the entire way through flight school until you graduated. And the only benefit you did have is at the end, they made you a senior candidate. You had a little black tab on your flight suit, and people would salute you, and you could go to the O Club, which if you were married wasn't much of a perk. But then, when I got to the Chinook track, I was a rated aviator, as a W1, and I thought, wow, I'm a real pilot, and I went to an air show. They had an air show, I don't know, somewhere Enterprise, Dothan, something like that. And I'm walking around with my son, he's a toddler, and there's a Huey on static display and a Chinook. And I walk over to the Huey, and there's a couple of, there's 2 pilots there doing their duty, and they don't know anything about me. And just my kid needs a picture in the helicopter, and he gets in there, and it comes time to go, and I go, hey, let's go over and see a real helicopter with the Chinook, right? And the look on their face was like they knew instantly what I was, and all I could think of in hindsight is they had to want to kick me in the balls. I was such a dick about that. I don't even know what I was thinking, but yeah, it was, yeah.
What would you describe as the typical personality that might self-select into the Chinook track? Because we've talked with folks from different tracks before, but never with a Chinook pilot. And not every pilot is the same, obviously. And like you said, you were looking for assault, but you found a great place with the Chinook and still did assault work. Yeah. But in general, for people who aren't familiar with the aviation community, how would you describe that personality?
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one. I did help somebody actually, a friend of mine had a mutual friend say his son was in flight school, had to pick his aircraft, and he was torn between Chinooks and other things. And so I put him in touch. You put him in touch with me, and I kind of felt him out for about an hour, and then said, "Okay, look, sounds like you want Chinooks, and he got it. And he's happy. So with that being said, you're right. Different airframes do have different personalities. I think the Chinook pilots generally are. I would say the Chinook pilots are the more laid back of the entire community. The Black Hawk guys can be laid back. The gun guys typically are like, kill, and then even there, right? Because there were Cobra pilots and Apache pilots, and then you still had the AH-6 guys over in the 160th, which are a whole different animal, or the DAP guys, even the MH-60 DAPs, and they have a different personality than assault Black Hawk pilots. I link the DAP guys into like, it's almost like a Chinook guy in a gun pilot's body, because they're very laid back. They're not like your typical gun pilot. They're just so laid back, and they're always hanging with the Chinooks, at least in the special ops community. And so with that being said, I guess you got to be easygoing. You got to be generally, we're a little taller than the other guys, right? Maybe because it's a bigger airframe. You don't see a lot of little guys in Chinooks. In the cockpit's not. There's body metrics for fitting in an aircraft, right? You can't be too big and sit in the front of a Apache. Well, you can't be too small and sit in the cockpit of a Chinook. And I've actually done stuff as an instructor pilot where I had to go, somebody who wanted to fly Chinooks, but their body, I can't say the word, the body measurements, amorphics.
Oh yeah.
I can't say it. Anyway, there's this, your arm, you have to be able to reach certain controls, without leaning. And so typically it was females, it'd be too small, and they would send them to me and I would have to evaluate them. It's like, all right, get in the cockpit, strap in. And then, I go out front of the aircraft outside the rotor blades, and you put your like 3 fingers on the ground, and then they have to move the seat until they can see it. Right. And that's actually an old night vision goggle adjustment technique for making sure your seat was in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they were in position where I knew they could see what they had to see, you come in and go, okay, grab the engine condition levers, hit the rotor brake, get these circuit breakers, this gang bar. If you can reach everything, you're fine. Get the pedals. Luckily, the seats come all the way forward. They tilt in a Chinook, and the pedals go back and forth. Like in some of the, I don't know about the 58, but I know the like the AH6, MH6, the pedals don't move. And if you're a big guy, man, your knees are in your chest.
Yeah.
And it sucks. I don't know how they do it, because I know there's guys bigger than me that fly the MHs, and it's like, man, I don't know how you do it, because I couldn't. But so generally sized, you got to be willing to fly instruments, and you got to want to pick up heavy shit. It's I just love a heavy aircraft. A light aircraft is, it'll go fast, but what good is it, right?
Just a quick word from our sponsor, NordVPN, tied in with one of our combat stories, and we'll get right back to the show. You all recall John Shrek McPhee's story in episode 25 of running solo ops in Afghanistan with the unit. When he did that, he talked about blending into his surroundings and disguising himself. These are precautions you have to consider to operate securely and safely in a hostile environment downrange. When you're at home, working or browsing the web, looking at your banking or buying something online, you also need to protect yourself, which is why I use NordVPN to stay safe in the hostile environment that is the internet. NordVPN disguises your IP address. It lets you access content you might not be able to from your normal location, and even get better prices on some websites by coming in from another location. It'll scan downloaded files for viruses, block phishing, and malware-ridden websites, and is the fastest VPN out there. Please head over to nordvpn.com/combatstory and grab your exclusive NordVPN deal and help us keep this show going. If you go to nordvpn.com/combatstory, you get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 additional months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and it's so easy to use. And now, back to our combat story.
You got to carry something, so whether it's, 90 Rangers in the back, and they're stuck in there like battle droids from, Star Wars, and they're just amazing guys to watch do that. It's like the clown cars, at the circus. They just keep coming. And it's like, oh my God. I've got some video. I don't have it anymore, but I've taken video of Rangers, like 90 Rangers coming out of the back of a Chinook, and they just keep coming.
Can you get 90 in there?
Easy. Well, I say easy. I'm up
if you're back there, it might not be.
What they do, they practice though. They literally, I said they're like the battle droids, because if you ever watch any of the Star Wars movies, it's like Roger, Roger, and they march up in together, and on command they all turn around, and then they kind of sit down in between each other's legs, and they strap to the floor. We have these straps that run down the center of the floor, and we call them Ranger straps. And on their belt, they'll have a lanyard, and they just sit down and snap into the Ranger straps. But I think typically, like in Iraq, we would carry 30 to 40 Rangers was a good number. It's not really crowded, because the Chinook's meant for 33, with seats. So you take,
and then 90.
Yeah. So you take the seats out, and generally we didn't run with seats. Occasionally, we'd end up with a ground force that would insist on them, because maybe the infill was further the flight, and it's like, hey, look, my legs are asleep by the time we get there. If we're gonna fly 3 hours, can I have the seats? Like, yeah, we'll put the seats down, and they're good.
You got to pay up to get those seats. All right, so what you mentioned, the build and the personality. It's interesting. I mentioned to you just before we hit record, but my roommate in flight school, Robert Kurtz, went on to fly Chinooks, also in 160th, and
he's fairly tall.
He's a big guy. He's probably 6'5", 6'6", and fit. Like he was always out running long distances and hiking. But when we were in flight school, everybody else was in 58 Charlies, and he was in a Huey. Like they had him in a completely different airframe to accommodate, and he went straight into that Chinook track for sure. And laid back as well. Very simple. Like everything you just described was to a T with Robert.
Yeah. And you got to be willing to do instruments. Some guys don't like flying instruments. You flying in the clouds without being able to see outside, and based on a lot of the equipment that they have, they can go very low to the ground before they have to make a decision whether to continue the approach or not. So the other thing, you got to be maybe a little adventurous, because the mission is so varied you can carry, you might have a Mercedes in the back of the car, like an armored vehicle. It might be a pickup truck or a Humvee with a towed artillery piece, and the tube is up in the cockpit. Uh, you might be carrying celebrities or a congressional delegation. You might be slinging a bulldozer or a 198 howitzer, which is one of the most awesome loads there is. And it's every, whether it's day, night, bad weather, you just got to be ready to do anything. So it's almost like you come in one day and go, hey, what are we doing today? Oh, we're going to haul cannons. All right. How about tomorrow? Oh, we're going to do Humvees, inside or, internal or external. Oh, we're going to do both, and so I think that's the thing, right? You got to be, if you're a Black Hawk medevac guy, you're going to go get injured people, and that's all you're going to do. If you're a gun guy, you're going to blow crap up. And, other than that, the assault world in 60s, they have some VIP and stuff, but it's not as varied because, though they can do sling loads, it's not, the same range of opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Could you speak to the configuration of a Chinook? Obviously, it varies by mission type, as you were saying, but just for people who haven't ever even seen one, to think about like what is the crew composition? Where are they during a typical flight? Like if you're doing an assault, for instance, who's going to be where and how many people are on that aircraft, just for the aviation
well, first of all, let me look at this. So this is not a plug for the book, Razor 03, and I Stalker,
but it should be
available where books are sold. No, but so this is the Chinook, right? This is an MH-47 Echo or E. It's got a 2 rotor heads. Each blade is roughly 30 feet long. The airframe itself is about 50 feet long and maybe 8 to 10 feet wide. It'll do 170 knots, so almost 200 miles an hour. And that's fully loaded. It'll do it. I've had Blackhawks and Apaches call, can you slow down?
Yeah.
Dude, you're empty. I got 40 Rangers on board. Yeah, well, slow down. So it's meant to go fast, right? And it's very stable. The joke about the Chinook, right? You hear the double-headed dumpster, right? So, or the black school bus of death, things like that. So, or the 2 palm trees mating in a dumpster, So that's the thing with the Chinook, and they're armed with. So I'm going to talk about the MH-47, right? So that's the E or the G, which the MH-47
and the MH being the kind of the special operations configuration, as opposed to the CH that the conventional side would use.
So in Army helicopters, CH would be a cargo helicopter, UH utility helicopter, AH attack helicopter. In this case, all of the special operations versions are MHs, right? So modified helicopter. So you have enhanced capabilities and other equipment that the other conventional forces don't have. So in a typical MH mission, you have 2 pilots, pilot and a co-pilot. Pilot can sit on either side of the cockpit. Typically, they sit in the left seat. Most of the guys I know that are left-handed pilots in command will sit in the right seat, because there's a keypad to type in. It's called a CDU, right? And so it's by your inner knee, whether if you're in the right seat, your right or left knee, and the other way around. So anyway, it's easier to type in, I guess, with your strong hand. And other than that, there's no difference in the cockpit. Although in MH-47, there's a rotor brake on the right seat side. It's a lever way up here. It's a hydraulic brake, and you can start the engines with the rotors not moving, for shipboard operations in particular, or high wind. If it's high wind, you get the engines up to operating RPM, and you just let go of the brake, and up it goes. And the same thing with stopping it. In an emergency, I've stopped it in 1 revolution. I mean, you just cram it on and stop it. They don't like you to do that, because then all the dampeners get all screwed. But so that's the pilots. In between and behind the pilots, about 1.5 feet or so, is a jump seat, also called the troop commander seat. And that's where, if in an air assault with the 101st, for example, the lieutenant would sit there, and the platoon sergeant would be in the back, and he could talk with the pilots. He could see what he's coming into, and he can still talk to the guys in the back. But it's really not a great place for the troop commander to be. So they don't really sit there. It's just that's how it was designed. So typically we would have an air mission commander. So if you have multiple aircraft, there's a warrant officer in lead, but overall there's going to be a major or a lieutenant colonel or higher in that jump seat to make mission decisions. So in the 160th, the flight lead is the primary planner, briefer, and he leads the mission. And all of the contingencies that have been briefed or might be SOP, he can do on his own. So, if I know that, there's weather on a hill up ahead, I can divert the flight. I don't have to ask the air mission commander. He's just going to sit there and keep his mouth shut. And what he'll generally do is talk to the overhead assets and coordinate with the stack as we come in. He'll get the sit reps on the target before we get there, and he'll maintain general overall awareness of the entire mission, as opposed to the flight lead, who's more concerned. As long as that air mission commander's there, the flight lead can focus on getting the flight where he's got to go into the correct landing area. So that's the front of the cockpit. Then you get past, there's a red line on the floor, right? And I don't even remember why it's there, but I think it has to do with it. If cargo is in the aircraft, you can't put stuff in front of the red line without infringing on the pilot's ability to egress through the interior cabin. But the crew chiefs like to say, everything behind that is theirs.
They own.
So, the pilot, if they don't like the pilot in particular, or it's a new guy and they're trying to break him in, if you will, he might, I've heard pilots, co-pilots mostly, say stuff about, hey, can you move whatever bag here or there? Can you do this? And flight engineer might say, sir, it's behind the red line. Shut up. I'll get it. And that's usually the WOJG that's getting that kind of treatment.
Yeah. Awesome.
And but so just in front of that red line though is there's two crew chiefs, the left and right gunner. And in the MH community, that's a M134 minigun. Right, it's currently made by Dillon, and it's a battery-powered 6-barreled Gatling gun that shoots 4,000 rounds a minute, just on one rate. Previous to that, we had a GE version of the gun. It had a low and a high rate, but it was it was overly complex, the mechanism, and the gun was the same, but how the bullets got into the gun was bad, and the AC motor was kind of crappy. So if you lost generators, you lost guns. Whereas the batteries, one battery was designed, there was two batteries on each side of the aircraft, and one battery could pull all the guns at the same time through 4 reloads in cold weather, right? So it was over-engineered to be able to do that. But anyway, that's probably the flight engineer. So there's a flight engineer and 3 crew chiefs, right? So the flight engineer is typically an E6, and he generally stands at the right front door. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that door has a step, and there's a refuel panel off to his left that when we do air refueling, he has a series of toggle switches he's got to work to get the gas into the aircraft and how it flows into the tanks. So he's a very important person. And then the guy to the left of him on the left gun is generally the most junior of the crew chiefs, because his only job other than airspace surveillance is defending the aircraft with a gun, right? And then you go back all the way to the ramp, and then there's a guy on the right ramp. He's probably the second most important person, because he has the lever that raises and lowers the ramp, and he has an M240 machine gun, very conventional machine gun. We use the ground version, so that if you have to get off the aircraft, the gun comes with a shoulder stock instead of the butterfly grips, and it worked great. But his job is to get a head count for the troops. So when the assault force gets on, anytime they get on or get off, he's got to count, and we have to know, if there's 40 guys on board, I got to know 40 guys got off and 40 guys got back on. And there have been many times where the head count was contentious. It's like, we have 39 Eagles. We're supposed to have 40. Yeah, maybe we have 41.
Oh,
what is it, guys? In the meantime, we're getting shot at. So, you can hear the bullets, tink, 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 coming through the aircraft. And it's like, give me count, because I can't leave somebody on the ground. And then, once in a while we'd take off and get the count and we'd stay local. Like one time we did it in the winter and it was in uh, Ghazni in Afghanistan and big firefight, hip deep snow. Rangers all had frostbite and the head count was off by like three. And then the ISR platform said there were three people armed with
Oh,
long guns walking down the road. And I'm like, is that them? You got to get the count right. Turned out they were guys we CASEVAC'd and somehow didn't get in the count. And they were Afghan National Army guys. But, the stress of the flight lead is making sure all that happens. But anyway, that's what the guys do. And they also do fast rope. Fast rope is a long nylon braided rope. It's about this big around. Think of like a fire pole in a firehouse or a playground. And these things vary from like 30 feet to 120, I think, is the ranges. And so places you can't land a Chinook, you can hover over it. Ropes come out, guys slide down the ropes. It's in all the recruiting videos. It's the fast rope is it's the type of maneuver. Well, it's not the maneuver, it's the rope itself, right? Everybody comes in fast rope, and they whip in like you're in some movie, and it's like then you're like, ah. So you gotta just kind of take it easy. That's saying, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That's kind of that. But anyway, so those are the guys in the back, and then depending on which aircraft you are on the chalk, you might have a 160th medic on board. And the medics all are special operations qualified. I can't remember the name of the school. It's at Fort Bragg. They're
this, yeah,
probably some of the best in the business. And I used to have to fight with the ground force, the assault force in the beginning, because in Afghanistan, the head counts were lower because of the altitude,
yeah,
right? So, instead of 40 guys that I could carry in Iraq, I could carry maybe 20 or maybe 10,
it's
in
crazy.
Afghanistan, right? And so they'd say, well, take the medic out. We have a medic. I'm like, no, no, he's not for you, right? He's for me.
Yeah,
I mean, ultimately, he's there for the CASEVAC, but in order to get them to agree to let him stay on board and not replace him with one of their guys who would get off the aircraft, it's like, all right, once you guys get in, what are we, what if we get shot? And
yeah.
then if you get shot, are you going to let me take your medic off the assault to watch you? And they're like, no, why would we do that? Like, well, then you got to leave my medic on board.
I feel like this is a conversation you've had more than once.
Yes, yes, it is. And then, we even had occasionally you could have what's called an SRT, surgical resuscitation team. This is four high-speed doctors in emergency medicine. You have a nurse anesthetist, a chest guy, and I'm not sure what the other two guys were, but they're all like if you got your head ripped off, they can sew it back on with a Swiss Army knife, and you're likely to survive. But they would want to be the primary CASEVAC, and I would have to fight with them. It's like, guys, I can't put four high-speed doctors on an aircraft that's going to land amongst RPGs and heavy machine gun fire, which is what every CASEVAC is like. You go in for a CASEVAC, it's never, oh, Bill got shot, but it's okay. Come on in.
Yeah,
It's like no. It's like, all right, come on in. We'll try to get him in an area, to block bullets, and that never is the case. And I'm like, look, we'll go in and get him with our medic. We'll fly a mile away, and if it's that bad, we'll land and transload, and you guys can have. But I'm not going to. But they want to be in the fight. They're there because they want to be in the fight.
yeah.
They're not there because they're trying to check a block on their resume. These guys are good.
That's one
But
of the
that's the
things.
truth.
Yeah, that we noticed in the Apache community. Like you have these great crew chiefs, but they just don't get to go out, and like be in the mission the way that you can in that community. So it's
Yeah.
really special. I'm sure that you build even tighter bonds with those crew chiefs.
Oh yeah. I mean, the guys. I put it in my book. I didn't really write too much about the crew chiefs, other than maybe a couple of minigun scenes. But in the acknowledgments, I did say, "Hey, look, thank these guys that keep the aircraft going, help us do the mission, and quite frankly, let me ride them into places that they shouldn't be, with no control over the fact that I'm taking them there." And what's interesting? We were talking about previous enlisted guys as pilots. Well, in the aviation community, I'd say that is true. that a lot of the pilots come from, the enlisted ranks of their mechanics and such. But the 160th is a little different. The pilots in the 160th are almost all former operators, or former action guys or fags, right? And
I've not heard that before.
yeah, but it's their term, not mine.
Hey, right.
Who's to judge? But no, so you have a lot of Delta guys, a lot of SEALs, Marines, a lot of Rangers. I'd say almost everybody in the Chinook community in the 160th. If you're not a straight up Chinook guy, you were a Ranger, and so that's the mentality they bring with them. And it's that relationship we have with the ground force in the 160th is that most of the pilots were at one time assaulters.
In the back of that thing. Yeah. They know how that feels.
And it might be, like we had one guy, he was a Navy SEAL. He was an E7. He was teaching at Buds when the towers got hit. He's like, I want back on a SEAL platoon. And they're like, no, you're too senior. And there's no way the guys that are there are going to give it up. So you're stuck. Stay at Buds. And he's like, screw you. I'll transfer to the Army. And he did. And when he did that, the 160th typically doesn't take W1s, but they occasionally do. They'll handpick them. You got to have something going for you. And there's a benefit to having a baby night stalker like that, in that you can grow them up in your community. Well, in this case, if you can take a guy that was an E6 or an E7 and Delta Rangers or SEALs or something along those lines, they're far ahead of the game. Like if a W1 who came up the conventional way, he just wouldn't understand. Like, well, this is how it is in aviation. It's like, yeah, but here's how it is in special operations. You're going to, we call the supported unit the customers. And I think, number one, it probably sounded cool when they started saying it, which is funny because the customers didn't like it when the 160th first started doing that, which is way back in the beginning. And now they're okay with it. Say, hey, the customer is always right for the most part. And we try to give them everything is customer oriented, whether it's, radios that are in the aircraft. Like we didn't have the capability to get the feeds from ISR platforms overhead, right, in the aircraft. And then eventually, the ground force had these computers that they, portable, things. And we had to develop ways for them to at least plug into the aircraft. And we gave up a SATCOM antenna for their stuff. So we had two SATCOMs, and with the ground force on board, you flip the toggle switch and their cable would make that antenna live. And then eventually we were able to, because in the cockpit of the MH-47, you have 5 multifunction displays. So, think of 5 laptop computers turned this way, and the one in the center had the capability of taking the feed from whatever we were watching. You just had to type in the code, and you could watch, pred feeds or ISR.
Awesome.
And that gap, what we call the companionway, where the troop commander sits, that seat is usually down, and the assault force team lead will stand there in between the gunners and looking in the cockpit, and he doesn't sit down, he just stands there, and he can look back at his guys, and he can look into the cockpit, and he can see what's going on. And the situational awareness is just amazing for him and for us.
And I think as you were talking about that SEAL, I was in flight school with a SEAL around that time. Rutledge, maybe?
That's him.
Rutledge. Yeah. I remember seeing him in the class with his trident on his uniform. I was like, that's pretty badass.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Nobody was surprised. He actually replaced me at West Point.
I thought so. I was thinking, I think he went to West Point also. Yeah.
They changed the command position from a CW5 to a 4. And the thing, it was a big fight with HRC. They wanted to send me, Apache guys. And I said, hey, the problem with an Apache guy is unless he has experience with a hoist, instruments, and a sling loading, and hoist. He doesn't really belong because he's not the commander. There isn't like sitting around with a cup of coffee going, you guys go do this. He's out there doing it, and he's probably one of the primary pilots. And when you fly down to DC with the general in bad weather, you land every time with your reserve and right at it. And that's if you don't screw anything up. So, having a guy that might do a missed approach or might have a delay is not conducive to a safe flight environment.
Yeah, but, I mean, an Apache guy who has Yeah, they don't have any of that skill set.
No, and night vision goggle. We do rescues up here with the, I don't know, I did 7 rescues with night vision goggles up here with the hoist. That's like, okay. So I would talk to HRC, who was an Apache guy, and I'd say, okay, fine, your candidate, how many goggle hours does he have? Well, he doesn't have any, he's got, 50. I'm like, well, I have 4,000. You tell me we've got something comparable here? Well, no, but Rutledge had a couple thousand, and I brought him in, and then after his tour, they bumped it back up to a W5. So
okay, interesting. All right, well, he was a great guy for sure. So let's, if we can, Alan, can you take us to the first time you were flying in combat, even if it was mundane? I don't actually know if it was for you, because I think you might be the first person we've talked to who flew in Desert Storm, but love to hear it.
Yeah, so let's back up first to Desert Shield, right? So Desert Shield preceded Desert Storm. That's how everybody got to Saudi Arabia, was Operation Desert Shield, which was a defensive operation to keep Iraq, who had just invaded Kuwait, from invading Saudi Arabia. So the 18th Airborne Corps, the 101st, 82nd, everybody shoved all their airframes to Saudi Arabia. And I want to say there might have been 150 Chinooks, and associated other aircraft. It might have been a little less than that, but I know it was over 100.
This is conventional, right? You have not made the move to 160th yet.
Right. Okay. So I'm in flight school when the invasion happens. Or no, I guess I wasn't. I was on leave. So I graduated flight school in February of 90, did the Chinook transition, which is like 4 weeks, and then went on leave, signed into my company in Savannah, Georgia, and the invasion happened. So I'm brand new in the company, and as you know, that makes me readiness level 3, RL3, right? So I'm not even really certified as a co-pilot yet. And they're like, oh, we're going to war. We're going to send our, we had 16 Chinooks in our company, and our headquarters was at Fort Bragg, and they had 16 as well. And each company also had 1 Huey, and that's like an old TO&E series. But so they give me my basic, my commander's eval, check ride, and a couple of things, make me RL2, the next level up, so they can train me. And then we have to ferry the aircraft up to Wilmington, North Carolina, to put them on a boat. Right? There's no airlift. There's no fancy roll on, roll off. This is an old fashioned, no kidding, like freighter from the 50s. And we land. There was only room at the port for 2 Chinooks at a time, so you'd fly up in flights of 2, roughly an hour or 2 hours apart, so they could pull the blades and then just set the aircraft off to the side, and they would shrink wrap them later and use a crane to put them up on top of the ship. They didn't even go inside. And so here I am, co-pilot. I got this crusty W2. Now, he was crusty because he was
crusty W2.
Yeah, but he was a captain in Vietnam. He flew Hueys and Chinooks. So he'd done two tours in Vietnam. He got out and he missed the service, and he came back in. They were short pilots. But same reason they brought the W1s in. They brought back these guys, but they didn't bring him back as a captain. They brought him back as a CW2. And so a guy named Jim Leach, if he hears this, great guy, super teacher. And we're chalk 2. We're flying along. I'm on the sticks. I'm not following on the map. And the lead aircraft has a chip light, right? So there's metal particles on a magnet, lights up a light. Emergency procedure, he's got to land and clear the fault, make sure the transmission's not coming apart. But so we follow them down to an airport. They're safe, but now we have to continue on up to Wilmington because there's a flow. The aircraft have to get there in time because the ship has to leave at the high tide. And so Jim hands me the map, and he's like, "All right, Woj, get us there." Right?
Wow.
Remember, there's no GPS back then. There's nothing. You had a Doppler and Omega, and they were terrible. They can help you find a continent. It's like, hey, look, there's North America, But so I didn't really know where I was. And he goes, okay, you got us on the map? And I'm like, okay, I got the oceans off to the right. There's a big airport over here and a highway. Okay, yeah, I got us. And then he goes. And then it's time to, all up the East Coast, there's all these big airports. And he's like, all right, what's the next radio frequency? just a minute, I'm starting to turn the map like I'm driving a bus, the steering wheel, because I'm trying to make the map fit what I see in the terrain. And he knows, I mean, he knows what he did. He handed me the map when I didn't really know where we were anyway, because I was flying. And I'm like, there's some wires in 5 miles. And sure enough, you can't be wrong with that, He's like, okay, how far is the airport? The next airport. I'm like, about 5 miles. So I should have the frequency tuned up, and I don't. He goes, what's the frequency? Jim, I don't know where we are. I'm lost. Here's the map. And he knew where we were the whole time. He tuned it up from memory and called through the airspace.
Jeez.
Showed me on the map. Look, here's where you are. And then we went. I was pretty good after that. And then he gave me a break and let me fly again. Nice. But so it's ironic that my very first flight away from the training area, cross country, I'm lost, just lost in the sauce. And I end up being a special operations flight lead, years later, leading missions into
nice.
That's strategically important. And I couldn't find a damn frequency to an airport.
Well, I'm sure you did better for the selection process for 160th.
Not really.
No?
I'll tell you about that.
All right.
Back to Desert Shield, right? So the ship, I want to say the ship takes a month to make the crossing, and in the meantime, I'm still RL2, the readiness level, and the 160th hadn't left yet, and right next door to us was 3rd Battalion of the 160th, and all of our pilots knew those guys, because one of the big equalizers in Army aviation is an assignment in Korea, which is a year-long assignment. Guys have to do it. And so you get the 101st guys, the 82nd guys from Fort Drum, Fort Hood, Savannah, they all do a year in Korea and they kind of come home. And they do 2-3 years and they do it again, right? And so everybody knows everybody, all the senior guys anyway. And they just said, hey, can we use one of your helicopters for training up the WOJG? And they said, sure. Now these were MH-47Ds, what they call warbirds. And the only thing special about them is they had an oxygen generator on board and miniguns. So everything else about it was exactly like the aircraft I was flying. So, they didn't install the miniguns and we weren't using oxygen. So no big deal. So they finished all of my RL progression in a 160th aircraft, which is kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
With our pilots, our crews. And then we go to Desert Storm or Desert Shield. We're in the port of Dammam, which is near Dhahran. And that's where everybody was coming in. And we stayed in these warehouses and then eventually went to a couple of different camps and ended up at King Fahd Airport, which is where the 101st was. And it was amazing because their Chinooks were just lying down the taxiway. And I was like, oh my God, there's Chinooks as far as you can see. And back then the 101st had 3 companies of Chinooks, and then there was whoever else was there, maybe the 82nd or the guys out of Germany, I think actually were there. And then they add our 16 Chinooks. It was just an impressive, bit of hardware. And so then there was like 6 months of that, flying, and we would fly. The dust landings were terrible, and the senior guys didn't want to do it. They could, but they didn't want to. Why would you do it when we had 2 W1s? It was me and a guy named Tim Cools, and they dragged us on every mission, and I got really good at landing in the dust or hovering in the dust to pick up a sling load. And, some of the senior guys couldn't do it, but I could because I had like 6 months of flying literally every day. And, we would fly, really we were flying supplies, because they were setting up for that, what they call the left hook, pushing everybody north and out to the west for a Schwarzkopf little maneuver. And, tanks break, trucks break, they need food, they need water. And though they had a line of convoys up there constantly and what they call the tap line road, we would fly up and bring stuff. And if it was important, they had a thing called Desert Express. So a C-130 would come in just before dark. We'd fly over, land behind it. They'd take a pallet, 463L pallets, these big Air Force pallets that are made of aluminum honeycomb, and they'd pull those off. And there was a rail system in the Chinook that would allow them to just slide it in, lock it in place, and we could go. And on the other end, you'd have a forklift, unload it, and it would be things like, tank transmissions and, stuff that was really important to keep the fighting force going. And that was kind of my life, just flying literally every day at night if we could. And back then, here's the thing: the Army was spouting off, we own the night. The Army, we own the night. NTC, everybody's out there we're in the desert, we own the night. I don't remember how many accidents we had where we ripped the skids off a couple of Hueys, ripped the landing gear off some Chinooks flying into sand dunes, right? Because the sand dune would come up, and that's what you would see is the top of the sand dune. But then it'd level off a little bit and come up again, and you wouldn't see the again part, right? So everybody's trying to fly low and fast because that's what you do in combat, and they couldn't see those things, and they just ripped the landing gear off. And what they ended up doing, the command said you had to fly, like in Chinooks, you had to fly with 3 pilots. One sat in that jump seat, and his only job was monitoring the radar altimeter, and if you got below 150 feet, he was essentially a voice warning system. He'd say, altitude low, come up. That was his job, and then when the war started, we didn't have enough pilots to do that. We just had to deal with it. But there was no automated, what we in the 160th called Bitch and Betty. She'd squawk at you, altitude low. And that woman's a very nice woman, by the way, for real. But
have you met her?
I haven't met her, but her a bunch of guys that were in our systems integration officer knew her, and her picture was like everywhere, and she signed everything Bitch and Betty.
That's awesome. Cool. I don't know if it's the same voice that we had in the Apache, maybe with the same avionics, but like that voice, it's pretty calming. Like it's telling you something bad is happening, but it's not freaking you out at the same time.
No, I think it's different because she was a bitch. She'd start out altitude low, altitude low, altitude low, altitude low. You're like, all right. You could act her away with your thumb, but a lot of guys would get mad if you did that. And they say, no, you fix that with the thrust, the collective. But it's like, no, I'm not going to listen to her the whole time. It's terrible. But
that's great.
So Desert Shield transforms into Desert Storm, right? Which lasted 100 hours. And our big mission, our little claim to fame was establishing and maintaining forward operating base Cobra, which was this huge, it was a FOB, not in the classic sense that you and I know, we have buildings and stuff. It was out in the middle of the flat desert, and it was forward arming and refueling points, artillery, helicopters, and so they were forward staging. And this is where it was the Apaches had first come into this, right? This was their big conflict, and they were running up and down the road leading in and out of Baghdad or Kuwait, tearing up the bad guys. And the Cobras were used to protect us. So as we flew up into Iraq, the Cobras would follow us up and down the route. There were not enough of them to stay with us like in a flight, so they would essentially have sectors, and they would kind of just hang out. It'd be like the route was cut into thirds, and the mission had to be done in the daylight because we had found out, like I said, over the previous 6 months, we did not own the night. We kind of rented it, and sometimes it was better than others. And as a matter of fact, the older guys would prefer to fly unaided than with goggles. They thought it was safer. And on a risk assessment, the numerical risk assessment, it was safer to fly unaided doing anything than adding goggles to the mix.
Because the goggle technology just wasn't there yet?
Yeah, because we had 5s and early 6s. But like in our aircraft, the pilots wore 6s and the crew chief wore 5s, which are like these, used to be full face and somebody cut the bottoms off and flipped them over, kind of thing. You held on with surgical tubing and weight bags and all that shit. But anyway, that was a fact of life, right? So here I am, out of 16 air crews, only 6 of us were certified to fly at night. Like you had, wow. In other words, you had not hours, because remember, I'm just a W1. I've got like 40, 50 hours of goggle time maybe, but I'm current. I'm flying every night. So, I probably had 200 hours over there of goggle time, which is quite a bit considering everybody at the time was flying 1 hour every 45 days.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Currency, but not proficiency, right? So that's how I ended up getting in all these, these important missions that we had, because I was good in the dust. I was good with goggles. I could do any of the missions, and the older guys were like, "Hey, have at it. Let the
Wow.
WOJG do it." And for whatever reason, but it was nasty flying. It was I'm coming up in this, right? So to me, this is just, well, this is what you do.
It's just what it is for you. Yeah.
This is it. And for them, they're like, whoa, this is not what I signed up for. Chinooks, airport to airport, all the stuff I didn't want about it. And the Army was evolving, and so we actually lost an air crew to an unlit antenna. They went unaided. They had goggles on board. They were one of the 6 crews, but once again, they decided at the end of a long day, they were familiar with the area. They could get back, to our base without any trouble, and they did not take their goggles out. And it was a dark night. The moon hadn't come up yet, and they ran into an antenna, which is interesting because they were ahead of us by a couple of minutes. We all took off one at a time to go home. And my pilot in command, I was the co-pilot. He's like, "What do you think, Al? We could just go back unaided." I'm like, "Oh, come on, sir. Let's do, goggles." He's all
Good
right.
for you.
Yeah. And so we were flying along, and I'm navigating, and I can't see this tower. I'm like, "Hey, there should be a tower off the nose, but I don't see it. Let's deviate. We'll offset a mile or two, to the right." So we did that, and the aircraft behind us also had goggles, and they did the same thing. And when we got back, we found out we were missing a Chinook, and it was one that had taken off with the commander and the SIP. They had taken off ahead of us, and we never saw them. And they hit the antenna. The aircraft came apart at 300 feet, and the door gunner actually lived. He was an infantryman that was an augment, and he said the last words in the cockpit were, "Oh shit, where'd that come from?" And that was it. So.
And the commander and SIP, no less.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they were older, and they felt it was an attitude, a culture that unaided was safer. I mean, it's hard for you and I to comprehend that now, but that's how it was with that generation of pilots. And I met guys when I taught at Fort Rucker at the Chinook transition. We'd have guys come in, National Guard guys who had been in Vietnam, and they'd done some things, and they were scared to death of night vision goggle portion of the course. And what was cool is that was a much nicer version of goggle by then, and you take them out, and they're like, "Oh my god, I can see, this is amazing. Why was I so scared?" I'm like, "I don't know." Even Novacell, right? He got the Medal of Honor for doing a medevac where he flew out in instruments and then just started letting down over a light that was in the trees. And then when he got down to the bottom, he could see the trees. He followed a trail, and it's like, that's insane. I look at that now. It's like, that's just crazy. With goggles, you just look at, do it, and you're there. But he did that, so that was those guys.
My old man flew Hueys in Vietnam, and we'll often talk about, if you can imagine flying Hueys then versus your son is flying Apaches. And I believe you have a son who's flying a pretty advanced aircraft, or was, right? The F-18.
Yeah.
So the difference in technology is staggering.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that first deployment, I really didn't get shot at. We were dealing with the darkness and the weather and the complexity, and they did that fob cobra in the day because there's no way we were doing that at night. The Chinooks were coming up in flights of 5, and think about it, there's like 150 Chinooks, flights of 5, they're just up and back, and you'd pass the guys coming back. If we did that at night, there would be more than one aircraft destroyed. I'm convinced. But so then we come back from that, and now the Army's focus is, we're gonna own the night. We thought we didn't, but we're gonna get it right. And so everything you did, whether it was NTC, JRTC, Sand Eagle, anything, your RTEPs, everything involved goggles. So what that did is it kind of forced the old guys to just go, you know what, screw this, and they retired.
Wow.
And that left, another group of W1s and 2s coming into Chinooks. And so the whole entire force of Chinooks in the middle 90s was transformed from these older Vietnam vets who had, balls the size of basketballs, but it's a new way of doing things, and they're not willing to, I did my thing. Let me get out, right? So then you pass the torch essentially, and the younger guys are doing it, developing new techniques. And this is where, the 160th is entirely, they started in 1980, evolving with night vision technology. And think about this. So Operation Eagle Claw was the first hostage rescue attempt in Iran. The pilots that did that, they wanted to use Chinooks, but they didn't use them because they felt that Army pilots couldn't fly off a ship, and that because the blades on the Chinook didn't fold, it would be an OPSEC violation to leave them up top. Yeah. All right. So they used these Marine Corps, what is it now? Navy helicopters, Marine Corps pilots. The first set of pilots were Navy pilots. They couldn't hack the dust landings. So they thought, well, Marine pilots are used to landing on the beach at night, right? But not with night vision goggles. And back then, they didn't have a pink light, the IR filter, searchlight. They had a piece of brown paper that was developed by the OSS in World War II. It was like this infrared paper. So think of like a grocery bag coated in some kind of wax. And they put that over the landing light. And you turn on, and people couldn't see it. But if you were wearing goggles, you could see, just like we do with a pink light. Problem is, if you leave the light on too long, it burns through the paper, and now you no longer are covert, right? And now it's a white light again. So they had to be very, very limited on when they used it. And the goggle technology back then sucked. It was the fives, and they were crashing on every landing. And I saw some of that in Chinooks even in the 90s. Guys coming in, and you're doing a good approach. The dust comes up, and then you just kind of grit your teeth and gut it out, and you hit the ground, and it's either a good landing or a bad landing. And if it's a bad landing, it's like broken landing gear. If it's good landing and you didn't hit a rock or a ditch, which you always find when you get out, your flashlight, you're looking around, well, let's see where we landed. Oh, look, that rock is a foot away from the landing gear. That would have been bad, but you got lucky. And but anyway, that technology and the use of goggles developed from that. In the 160th, as they somebody invented the actual lens for an IR light as opposed to paper, and they did all these techniques. And there's a memorial wall at the compound. I should know it, but I don't know how many names are on it. There's a lot, and many of them are from the training days as they learned what the limitations. So the night manual that we grew up with in the Army, whatever that FM was, that was originally a 160th product that they used for their guys. It told you how big, a time distance heading card, the writing had to be, so you could just glance down and see it, without, being inside the cockpit too long. Back then there was no NVG lighting. So you would focus one tube inside to look at the aircraft instruments. And then, you might keep it that way. Think of an Apache guy, right?
I know it's not easy.
Yeah. Your retinal rivalry. It's like, the predecessor to that was night vision goggle flying. And it's just insane how fast they improved all that. And then the regular Army, the conventional forces adopted a lot of that. But that's my first deployment, and it's a long way around of saying I never got shot at in that, but we did lose a crew to the dark and an antenna. And then, so, I said that we did all these, NTC, JRTC with night vision goggles, and I was always one of those guys. I was a unit trainer, and really I was one of the senior guys. I was CW2, but when it came to flight time, I was kind of the high time guy of the group of people I was with. And then I got an assignment to Korea, for that mix that I'm always talking about, right? And I'm over there. I'm a no-fly line unit trainer, a goggle unit trainer, and a P-73, which was the airspace around Seoul. You had to navigate that for some insane reason because you couldn't even use the airspace. It would be like, all right, you have to fly around Seoul, around the president's house, and you have to do it all from memory. Why am I doing this? Well, in case you ever have to fly up here, you fly this corridor to wherever you're going. Okay. Well, they didn't let you do that. I mean, I guess that was the intention of it, but as years went by, you just had to kind of go around it and then go straight in, and you didn't actually fly the routes, which was kind of weird, but you still had to maintain that currency. But so I did that for a year. And then what was really cool is there was a CW5, so they existed by now. And he comes over, a guy named Jake Stevens. He'd flown in the Korean War, right? This guy was,
Wow.
and he was a marathon runner. This guy was tough, like did Ironman competitions when I knew him. And I don't know how old he was, but he was super fit. Flew at the end of Korea, flew in Vietnam. He flew like the flying banana, which is, like a Chinook, but it looks like a banana.
Yeah.
And I was flying him, giving him his no fly line qualification. So that's the border between North and South Korea. There's a fly line, a line that you're not supposed to fly north of unless you're in a corridor, right? And if you get lost, you have to realize you got lost because you don't recognize the terrain, which you will have learned. And then you fly like a 150 heading and you call out, I don't know what the call was, hot dog or something like that. And everybody would know that you think you crossed the border and you're hauling ass back, right? And as a matter of fact, a guy named Bobby Hall had the misfortune of, OH-58 Charlie, I think, flew across the border. The other pilot was killed, and he was, paraded around the news for a little while. He's a super nice guy. I've met him since then, but he kind of got screwed on that whole deal. Here's the no fly line. Memorize the map, and now go do it. And then it snowed. Anyway, it's a long story for him. But so I'm with this guy Jake, and I'm flying up the corridor, and I'm not an instructor pilot. I'm just a unit trainer. And I'm starting to MOI, right? The method of instruction. So I'm talking, all right, we're going to fly up the center of the corridor, close to the center line, plus or minus 200 meters. We're going to stay at the altitude, as low as possible, safely navigate, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm basically regurgitating the regulation. And he goes, who taught you how to do that? I was like, do what? He goes, talk the procedures. I was like, I read the book and I'm doing it. He goes, you need to be an instructor pilot. So we got back and he called HRC, the human resources, right?
Wow.
Said, hey, this guy needs to go to the instructor pilot course. And they got me the course, but I was supposed to go back to Savannah, Georgia. And the HRC manager called me and said, hey, look, we think you need to be an instructor pilot, but if you're going to go back to Savannah, you're going to have to stay in Korea 7 months, to get a slot to go there, because that's when their slot is. Or you can go teach at Fort Rucker and you come right now. So I went and I taught at the cargo branch and I hated it. Like the first 2 sets of students were great. They were all W-2s. So they were eager to learn. They were fun. They were my age and basically my experience level. And they would listen. And they were just a lot of fun. And then the third set of students I had were National Guard from out of Birmingham. They had CH-54 sky cranes and they had turned them in and they were getting Chinooks. They did not want to fly Chinooks. They wanted to fly sky cranes. They'd been flying them since Vietnam, and it was a great aircraft, I guess. And they were mad, and they took it out of me. Like I personally, got rid of their aircraft and said, "Here, you're going to fly Chinooks." And I'm W-2. They're all W-4s, master aviators. I don't even have a star on my wings, and I'm trying to teach them aerodynamics, and this is why the Chinook does this. And they're like, whatever, kid, and they just were miserable to fly with. And I hated it. I had like 3 or 4 classes of those guys. And then I got foreign students. They're different in that most governments, when they send their people to American military schools, they're the best they have. These guys were all like aeronautical engineers and they had, 20,000 hours of flying, test pilots, whatever. And I'm trying to teach them, once again, like aerodynamics. Here's what a Chinook is doing. And they were very polite. And they let me, okay, once again, they were sent there not just because they're smart, but they can interface with their American counterparts.
Yeah.
They're making me feel like I'm teaching them. And then they would teach me some stuff like, oh yeah, if you look at this vector right here, this is really what's happening. I was like, oh, how about that?
That's cool.
And they were very nice, but I wasn't teaching them. And so I didn't feel that it was a rewarding thing for me. And then a friend of mine who was in the 160th, I had gone to the instructor pilot course with, was coming through for another school. And he's like, Al, you need to come to Fort Campbell. I was like, oh, because I knew guys that I considered much better pilots than me, and they didn't get accepted, for whatever reason, right? You never know why. Guys are always, I can't believe they didn't take so-and-so. Well, you don't know what his finances are, or maybe he beats his wife and nobody knew it and the psychologist
Mm-hmm.
pulled it out of him, or who knows what. But, and it doesn't even have to be anything that serious, but there's reasons why they don't take people. Maybe they're not willing to commit, maybe a bad credit check. But anyway, he's like, just fill out the packet, right? So I get it. Now, computers are still not a big thing. There's like a computer in every company, right? Usually the flight ops guy controls it. And so I had to fill this thing out by hand. It was like a packet like this thick,
Oh yeah.
and a stubby pencil filling it out. And I didn't sit down and fill it all out because I didn't think I really wanted to go. And I didn't think they'd accept me if I did go try out. So eventually there were no blanks left. And I mailed it in. And I got a call, 2 weeks later. Hey, Mr. Mack, how'd you like to come up and assess? Me? Sure. So I go up. I do okay, and I get accepted. And my command was pissed because I went back to Rucker, and the 160th had promised they'd wait like a year before they took me, so they'd let me assess. And they said, no, it takes too long to produce a Chinook pilot. We need him now. And so HRC cut my orders. My battalion commander freaked because he was brand new. I mean, he had just taken command like that week.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, here's this, CW2 who everyone is saying is, one of the best pilots we've got, and he's going to go to the 160. And he tried to stop it, and it didn't work. I went anyway.
What year is this?
This is 95.
Okay. Right.
94, 95 timeframe. Yeah. So I might have even assessed late 94.
You mentioned earlier that you did not do well on selection.
Well, nobody does. And that's the thing, right? So having been an instructor doing the assessments later on, I can tell you right now that if you're good and Fort Campbell's tough to navigate map and compass on a no moon night, right? There's not much to look at. And if you're not used to doing it, once you kind of get a couple flights under your belt in that area, you know what you're looking at. Oh, that kind of shading over there, that's a berm. That probably used to be a railroad track or, something. But you can't get near major roads, lit object, nothing. You can't handrail yourself up a set of railroad tracks. Everything you have to cross perpendicular. So there's nothing really to look at other than stuff to your left and right. And you have to learn how to do that. And though you learn it in flight school, not to the extent like this, right? So, I did okay with the swim. I did okay with the PT test. The psych test, it's like 600 questions, and then there's a 300 question test, and it takes you all day to fill it out. And then the general aviation knowledge test, and they ask you some obscure stuff like very specific threat system questions. So not just, what's the range of a 23 millimeter, but, the SA6 radar, the Gadfly 2, what is its capability of surface to air, and you're like, oh, fuck, I don't know, because that's the kind of stuff that, if you're going into theater where there is one of those weapon systems, you'll learn it, but generally speaking, you can't memorize all that stuff. That's unreasonable. You can know the general numbers, but you don't know that, how low you have to go, what, all that stuff. But anyway, the flight, I did really well in the contact flight. So that's traffic pattern flight. I did it in a Chinook because I was a Chinook guy. Slopes and all that kind of stuff. And I actually did really well in that. I did like a 22-degree cross slope, which really impressed my evaluator.
Cross slope landing.
Cross slope.
Yeah. So just for people who aren't familiar, 22 degrees, I don't know if that sounds like much to you, but like that is a significant slope to be landed on.
It is. I used to love taking Cobra pilots there during their assessments. And because, Cobra is like, this.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I put them in the downhill seat. And I actually had somebody write me on Facebook a month or two ago, because I have an author site now, and they were on that looking, and they go, hey, Al, I don't know if you remember me. You gave me like a 22, 25-degree cross slope, and I didn't like it. And I was thinking, well, you're not the only one. So I still don't remember you from that. But yeah, so I go out, and there was a thunderstorm along my route. Like you were going to go up and around back to and it's a grass strip that you go into. There's no lights. And they purposely do that. So it's difficult. And then they're going to do stuff like if you're not any good at it, they're just going to let you go and fail. If you're good, they're going to do things not really to screw you, but they're going to make it tougher on you. So they might not hold the heading you told them to, when you're busy. All right, do a fuel calculation. So now your head's down, spinning your whiz wheel around, and they kind of turn off course a little bit. Not a lot, but enough that it makes a difference when the clock runs up and you're like, okay, time, we should be at the checkpoint. I don't see it. Oh, I don't see it. They don't help you. And, maybe they don't fly the right speed. And it's all to see, well, number one, can you identify that it happened and fix it, which nobody ever does because it's dark and there's nothing to look at. And even if you did, and you get them back on course, they're not going to cooperate with time, or they'll put the aircraft out of trim so you can't see something, and the idea really is just so that, what's this guy got? Does he panic when he doesn't know where he is? You can tell they start doing the bus driver map, and yeah, so I flew right past my target, and I saw like a group of antennas, and I was like, oh, those antennas are 10 miles past my target. We passed the target. And he goes, you want to go back? And I'm like, nah, why at this point, right? I missed it. So he goes, okay, I saw all I need to see anyway. And it turns
How
out
do you
that
feel in that moment? I don't know. I don't know if you remember back, but just the way
I
you
do.
said it with such detail.
I felt like shit, and
Yeah.
it's like, I suck. I'm a terrible pilot. I can't believe I can't do this, but
I
I can tell
failed
you,
this. You probably thought you failed it, huh?
yeah. And what's funny though is they had a digital map in the aircraft. They had it dimmed down so I couldn't see it, but there was a safety pilot in the jump seat, because they knew the pilot was busy, so his job really was looking out, and it was also a secondary eyes on, what am I doing, kind of thing, and how am I doing it. And I remember saying there should be a set of railroad tracks crossing right here. There's got to be a set of railroad tracks. I can't see them, and I did see them. I glanced and I saw the corner of my eye. They were pointing at the screen, going like, I'm like, okay, so I did get where I was supposed to be. There was no railroad tracks there, but they had been at one time, and it was
Yeah.
on the map. The maps were all old, kind of stuff. But yeah, so I didn't think I passed, and I felt pretty shitty. I was like, damn, I suck, And when we did the board, they were like, "What'd you think?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't do very well." And they're like, "It's not that big a deal. We can teach you how to navigate."
Wow.
All right. And it's like swimming. If you fail in the pool, they don't care if you can't swim. They care if you give up, right? So if you grab the side of the pool because you freak out, and they go, "Hey, wait, you can't grab the pool," and if you kind of just panic, go, I can't do this. Well, you we can't deal with you. But if you get out there and keep giving it a try, and kind of make it the time, even if they've got to help you, they know they can teach you how to swim.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had guys that couldn't swim at all, and by the time they got through green platoon, they could swim just fine. I mean, they're not, beating Leah Thompson, but
So so you go through kind of mid 90s. So Black Hawk Down's already happened. Um, just could you take us to Anaconda? Because I know we're going to bypass so many interesting things here, but I'm just so curious. I remember
yeah.
reading Not a Good Day to Die, such an important mission. I would just love to hear what your role
Yeah.
was there.
All right. So I'm going to proceed that with, keep in mind, this is about 6 months into our deployment in Afghanistan. We've been flying almost daily for all these months. And every night we flew, we got shot at. Usually 23 millimeter. There was a lot of that around still. RPGs. We did have a couple SAMs. We had 16 confirmed SAMs fired at us. I had two of them fired at me in one day, flying General Franks into the embassy. But so I'd say that to let you know that getting shot at this stage for us felt normal, And I remember in the beginning how it felt. It did not feel normal. I was like, oh my God, And by the time we get to Anaconda, I'm of the mindset, you know, miss by an inch, miss by a mile, and miss is a miss. So if it gets close, it doesn't matter, because if you don't hear it hitting the aircraft, it's not a problem. I mean, you might do something to, break contact, but it's just not a problem. And so that weighs in later on in the Anaconda thing. But so Anaconda, to set the tone, right? Zawahiri and Bin Laden are supposedly in this area called Objective Ginger, which is in the Gardez Valley, and there's mountains to the south and east of it, right, leading over to Kaust and Pakistan. So supposed to be a lot of Al Qaeda in there, especially the big two. So the 101st, I think elements of the 82nd are going to do a big air assault, multiple LZs, all around Objective Ginger and Remington. And I can't remember which one's which now, but it was in that big area. Surrounding it, an area called the Whale, right, is a terrain feature that from the air looked like a whale in the water. So the operation had two components to it, the hammer and the anvil, right? So the anvil is where the enemy is supposed to be smashed upon, and that's the mountains and all the high-speed avenues of approach or departure from this valley. So we help out. So this mission is not ours at all. We really don't have a part to play until they realize they need the special operations forces on top of each of the key mountaintops that would overlook the valley and the roads leading out. So if somebody tried to leave, they would call for fire and bring in, attack helicopters or, A-10s or whatever was flying at the time, F-14s probably. And what would force them in that direction was the hammer, right? So that's the anvil. And the hammer is the main force, is a force of General Zia, was the Afghan warlord. And he actually had some of the better fighters in the country, along with like the Northern Alliance. And his force, led by some Green Berets, would convoy down and push the enemy forces, into view where the coalition forces could bomb them, right? So these are the Germans, the Canadians, I don't know, I think the French were there, American, Green Beret ODAs, Air Force controllers, all that kind of stuff. And we were supposed to help just put them in the mountains, and then that would be that. My job at the time was, I was one of the senior pilots, flight leads, and my two aircraft were, if Bin Laden or Zawahiri pop up, it's my flight that's going to go get him. So I've got SEALs attached to me, DevGru, SEAL Team 6 guys, and if they pop up, we're going to be the main force to go schwack them, and then everybody else will join in. But my job is to be the flight lead on that. They aren't there, and well, now you get this group of SEALs sitting around. There's big battles going on. The friendly forces getting their ass kicked because the operation was delayed. I want to say 2 weeks because of weather. And taking the opportunity, being the nice Americans that we are, we notified all the NGOs in the area, the Red Cross, the United Nations, Red Crescent Society, tell them, all right, hey, look, in 2 weeks, you don't want to be here because it's going to be a big battle, right? Well, it was very naive to think that these people aren't telling. So, and this valley was also a big battle against the Soviet Union, and the fighting positions were still there. They're carved out of rock. So the Afghan forces, the Taliban, Al Qaeda, just reassumed these roles that they had back in the 80s, and they would duck down when the B-52s came in, and the bombs. It was just amazing, the bombs falling, but they weren't injured. They were in these caves, and they just, as soon as the bomb stopped, they come back out, they start shooting again. It's like prairie dogs. It's like, where's everybody? And so the 101st is trying to get a foothold, but they're under very accurate artillery and mortar fire, right? So the forces that are up on the mountains that we had emplaced didn't have good enough visual on where these were coming from. So there's this mountain right in the middle, great big mountain called Takragar, and which is where my situation comes up. And they say, well, if we could just get eyes up on the top of this mountain, they'll have a view of everything we need to bomb, and they can call for fire where everybody else can't see it, and they'll be accurate with their fire. So it's like, who's available? Everybody's committed. Oh, wait, no. The HVT team is sitting around doing nothing. Al, go get take the SEALs down here. And it's kind of a long story as to how it develops, but I'm supposed to take them to the base of the mountain. and they're going to walk up under cover of darkness. But there's B-52 strike after B-52 strike, because remember, the 101st is still trying to get their ass, back in gear and get moving forward and get off their heels. So they're calling these things in, right? And I get delayed several times to the point where I finally shut the aircraft down over at Gardez at a fob. And when I go to start it back up, when they finally give me a window of infill, I have an engine run away. I have a hot start, right? So one of the engines, which had been kind of cranky and notorious for having this problem over the previous months, it just went, and I couldn't stop it. Every indication was red, right? So, and what that means is, there's green, yellow, red, and everything went red, and big lights I had never seen before. It's like, oh my God, what the hell is this? And they're like, all right, well, can you fly? So I'm like, well, I'm not taking you guys in this aircraft, at this elevation. There's no way, because we don't have single engine capability. If that thing goes, we're crashing. So I called back to Bagram for a spare, and this is where it gets very confusing for everybody. I actually wrote a paper called Razors for Dummies, because it was Razors 1 through 7, and I was Razors 03. And Razor 1 was actually the regiment SIP, and he had been infilling troops up on those mountains, and he was headed back to Bagram, and we actually passed each other. I'm headed south, he's headed north. We kind of flicked our lights on and off, waved, and got down there. So now I'm down there. I need a spare aircraft. Well, he's just getting back to Bagram. He's in the FARP. He's actually taking fuel, and they're like, hey, I need 2 aircraft to come down and replace us, right? Okay, so he gets gas and he hauls ass back to me. This is going to take, it's a 45-minute flight, best case. And so I tell that to the ground force, and like, that's not going to work, because with all the delays we had and this new delay, there's no way we're going to walk up, and we're not doing it in daylight. Can you take us to the top of the mountain? Well, the reason Razor 1 was putting troops in that night is because they did not successfully put them in the night before. They only got about half the forces in, because back then there was no imagery like we have now, right? I mean, you had 10-meter CIB, which is like a blurry image from 1993, and you had Russian maps that had great contour elevations, but the coordinate system was a different datum, so you had to convert that, and it was a problem. So everything, you used what we called PACE, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. So every team that went up had to have 4 landing zones planned, and if the pilot couldn't get you into the first one, he'd just proceed to the alternate, and the emergency, a tertiary, and then the emergency. And if he couldn't get you, it's an abort, you go home. So like half of the 20 teams they put up didn't get in the first night. So I'm thinking of that myself. I'm like, well, shit, I haven't seen any imagery of the top of this mountain. I don't know if there's even a place to land. And one of the SEALs that wasn't part of the team came up and said, oh, I've seen imagery. There's definitely a place to land up there. I'm like,
wow.
Okay. I said, I'll take you, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to get you in, right?
What altitude are we talking for this mountain?
12,500 feet.
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. So the base of the valley is roughly, I don't know, 8,000 feet ish. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take off as a flight of 2. This guy, my wingman's got a separate SEAL team, and I've got my SEAL team. So he's going to go, we're going to break off from a common route. He's going to infill his guys down in the valley. And then I'm going to, go up another way, and I'm going to take my guys now to the top of the hill. And then what we're going to do is we're both going to circle back around, link up at an aerial rejoin point a couple miles away on the other side of the mountains. And the plan is you show up at the landing zone or the rendezvous, you start your clock, and you wait 15 minutes. If the other guy's a no-show, you do a radio search. If that's unsuccessful, you leave, because there's no gas, right? There's no fuel down there for us. What you left Bagram with is what you got. So if you run out of gas, your airframe is stuck somewhere. And so, he does his thing. I'm at the top of this hill. We land on this snowy, beautiful landing zone, not hard to land on at all. It's surrounded by some trees. And the ground force goes, okay, we're gonna get out. And I go, hey, there's a donkey over here to the right at 1 o'clock next to a unmanned Dishka machine gun, a 14.5 millimeter machine gun.
No way.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, you'd think somebody would shoot at us, you know? And then a guy pops up over to the left at about 9:30, 10 o'clock position. And the left gunner says, I got a guy, you know, off to the left here. And I say, is he armed? He goes, I don't think so. Oh, he just disappeared. Now, what's important about this is the day before, 2 days before, there'd been a fratricide incident. The AC-130 had killed the main effort of the anvil, the hammer and the anvil, right? So the hammer's coming down, it's Zia's forces with Green Berets. The Green Berets are slaughtered by the AC-130. I mean, they just tore them up because they thought it was a misidentification, you know, it's fratricide. But that changed the rules of engagement for me. So we were at that point, before that had happened, we were weapons free, meaning I could shoot anything that wasn't identified as friendly. You know, I mean, judgment there, obviously. But now it's, I have to be fired at first. There has to be a hostile act. Well, that sounds chivalrous and it sounds honorable. Well, they shot at me first and then I killed them. Well, you know, had the ROE not changed, we'd have just shot that guy because he's the wrong place, wrong time. Now I got to wait for a hostile act. So I tell the gunner, I say, hey, look, if he pops up again, kill him. Because if he's friendly and he realized what was going on, he's going to stay down until we leave. You know, if he pops up again, he's going to, that's, in my opinion, that's hostile intent, which will, you know, end up with a hostile act.
Yeah.
And the guy did. He popped up about, you know, a couple feet to the right with an RPG, let one fly. And I remember watching that thing kind of stream at me, like in the movie Black Hawk Down. You see it with the sparks coming out of the back, looks like an old lava lamp from the 70s, and it hit a couple feet behind my seat and just in front of the main fuel tanks on the left side.
God, so it was a good shot from this person.
Yeah, I mean, he's thinking it's a good shot, but he didn't kill me and he didn't blow up the aircraft by hitting the fuel tank, which I don't know if it would have. It probably would have. Because the way RPGs work, right? You know, you get, so it came through the aircraft, it went through the ammo can for the left gun, and it blew up inside the cabin. But the doors are open. There's no overpressure like inside a tank, right? So it stuns the left and right gunner. Like, I don't talk to them for a couple of seconds, and the soundproofing catches fire, and they're, you know, the SEALs are still in the back and they're like putting out the fires. And in the meantime, aircraft now starts getting riddled with machine gun fire, AK rounds. And the guy on the right ramp is now saying, hey, we're taking fire. He's like, and there's fire in the cabin, you know, go, go, go. Now the SEALs have not left the aircraft yet. So if Neil Roberts doesn't fall out, this is just an aircraft that's got some damage, and you know, we dropped some bombs on the place. But I took out 3 electrical systems and 3 hydraulic systems. Now, I knew about electrical right away because everything in the cockpit went blank, right? And you can hear the fans. You know, you always have the MFD fans and stuff, kind of a whir. Yeah. And then it just, and you can just hear with the helicopter blades. Now, the engines will still run. You know, they've got their own little generators once they get started. But it's in what's called reversionary mode, which is not as good as the primary. So primary, when you pull in power, like in the old Huey, they had a droop compensator. This thing's got a droop eliminator potentiometer. I can't believe I remember that. But anyway, the engines will keep up with the demand of the rotor, and the rotor noise stays the same. In this case, it's in reversionary. When I go to pull power to get out of there, the rotors droop, and I can hear it. I can't see it in the instrumentation, but I can hear it. So I figure I've lost an engine, and the aircraft does pick up. And the edge of the mountain is right here, a several thousand-foot drop. So I just nose down the mountain. Well, in that time that as I lifted off and rotated, Neil Roberts, Navy SEAL, had been shot in the thigh, and he fell out. And he probably was already going to get out of the aircraft and had a big mountain rock and, you know, inertia. You know, you're not going to stop that. And the gunner back there, a little guy, grabs him. You know, like in the movies, I got you, but he gets pulled right out. Both of them fall about 12 feet, and the gunner is on a tether, right? He's on his gunner's harness, so he doesn't fall out of the aircraft. The other guy goes all the way to the ground. And so now I'm diving down the mountain trying to gain airspeed so that I can successfully auto rotate or have a single engine landing at the bottom of the mountain, but I need airspeed. And what I don't know is that we've lost a guy, and I don't know for sure that my gunner is hanging from the ramp. I'm feet off the trees, just diving down. And because I'm also using them as cover and conceal, not conceal, but cover from the enemy. And so he's got to be like, the trees tickling his feet, kind of thing. And the other gunner sees the tether, and he goes over and he's like pulls him up hand over hand. And then as I kind of turn around, they're like, hey, we've got the other engine. It's going, and they convince me it's running. I have no instruments. And so I level off, and I'm like, okay, we're all right. And they're like, sir, we lost a guy in the landing zone. I was like, what do you mean we lost a guy? He's like, he fell out. I'm like, what do you mean he fell out? Get a head count. And they're like, we don't have to count. We watched him go out. I'm like, I'm in total denial. And it's like, give me a head count. And they're like, fine. They humored me and counted whatever the number was. So, all right, we got to go back. So I started to climb, started to turn back to the landing zone, and the controls stopped moving. Like I could not move.
Oh my God.
Right. And then at Chinook, you can't move the controls. It's not a hydraulic assist. It is hydraulics that move the controls. So can't move it. My co-pilot jumps on. He thinks he's going to move the controls. I think we bent the cyclics, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. We're done.
Is that what you say on the radio?
I said that on the ICS. Yeah. And so the interesting thing is the crew chief in the back on the right, he has a can of hydraulic fluid, which is not much bigger than this. And he opens up, there's a little reservoir in the back so you can service it in flight, which was a new component of the Chinook when they made the D models. Anyway, he pours it in, and you got to use a can opener. He's like, and he pours it in, and he's got a little tiny, the lever on this thing is like, this big. So he's like pumping the throw in this thing's like this much, and he's pumping this quart of fluid in there. And as soon as he gets the fluid in there, the controls like come alive in my hands. I'm like, I can fly again. I don't know what you did, but I can fly. And he's busy because he's returning fire now on the M60 machine gun that we had back there. And so he's not, his hands are busy, so he's not telling me, I put fluid in. I just know we have controls again. I'm like, all right. And we turned again. And I could look down and I could see the entire battle unfolding beneath me, the whale and the friendly forces and the enemy. I was like, okay, I know exactly where I am, because the mountains up there's like 3 mountains that look like Tarkagar, and which is funny because that's what the SEALs thought they were going to go back up to it when we crashed, but it wasn't even the right mountain. I'm like, it's Tarkagar's over there. But anyway, so we're coming in and the controls lock up again when I'm on like a long final for the top of the mountain, and I'm like, sorry guys, we are going to crash on the mountain and it is not going to be survivable. And then that crew chief puts another can of fluid in, and I'm like, okay, I have controls, but there's no way we're going to the top of the mountain. We're going to turn left and try to make it to one of the friendly positions that I could see. So we did a gentle bank, slowed back a little bit, and then I just started a rate of descent about 300 foot a minute, about 70 knots. And my goal was to just, 300 foot a minute. If I don't run into trees at the bottom, maybe we survive. 70 knots isn't that fast. And then as we're coming down, I realized we're not going to make it to a friendly location. We're going to overshoot, but I don't want to steepen up the approach because I want to have one chance to survive maybe. And then the controls freeze up about 30 feet off the ground. So we're coming in. I've selected a landing area. The controls freeze again, and we now go into a lateral drift to the side, and there's a hill over here. And I know that if we hit it like that, we are not going to survive. It's going to explode in a big ball of flame, and that's that. And but what's that saying? Never quit flying the aircraft. So I couldn't move the cyclic. I couldn't arrest the slide, but I still hadn't moved the pedals or the thrust. So I kick the pedals to the right, the nose swings around. I'm now going in the direction of drift, and now I can't move the pedals anymore. So I basically had one push in every axis. And then as we touch the ground, I drop the thrust or the collective, and we settle in about a 15-degree cross slope, probably about 10 degrees nose high, and we make it.
Wow.
It wasn't even hard from the cockpit, although my crew chief in the back got slammed to the ground, messed up his back, and he complains to me once in a while. My back's messed up because of you. I'm like, no, it's your fault. I said, if you didn't put fluid in there, I wouldn't have landed there. We'd have just crashed and blew up. Your back wouldn't be bad. So it's your fault. And he's like, fair enough. But so there we are on the ground. We shut down.
Just real quick, Alan, as you guys are coming in, maybe like the second time the flight controls seize up, are you mentally just thinking like, I might not make it through this?
Well, the whole time I was thinking that, yeah. But you just don't stop flying the aircraft. And when I went back the first time, I had to go back and get Neil Roberts. It's like, oh shit. And let me tell you, that was not an easy decision, right? I mean, it happened quick. The decision was fast, but it was not an easy decision. Like, oh, I'm just going to go back and get him. It was like, I don't want to go back in there. They just tore the shit out of my aircraft, and we're not likely to survive, But it's like, if I don't go back, I can't show my face ever again, right? I got to go back, and there's that. It's the culture, And I mean, I knew it was the right thing to do, but it's like I don't know, your teenager making some decision that the parent had taught them this is the right thing to do, and they don't want to do it, but they do it because they know it's the right thing to do, totally against how they feel, but they're going to do it, and that's what I did. So, but once I realized there was no way we would be successful, and I still had, SEALs on board, customers, I'm still responsible for their lives. So what am I going to do? Just crash in the objective because, all right, we'll make a statement. Well, they did it. But, these guys get to see me trying. And then, I still have a wingman out there. And I'm thinking, well, if we survive long enough to get him, he'll just go get him, And so I'm still not thinking that this is going to go bad, other than we may not survive. So we get on the ground. And we had a commander at the time who his last name was Gorst, and he used to be a Delta operator before he went to flight school. Right? Remember I was telling you all these guys.
Yeah.
The other thing. So he was always making us do shoot down scenarios in training, and it was miserable. We'd go land out at Vagel, DZ, up there in the aft pylon at Campbell at night when you weren't supposed to be. Like you'd fly up to Cleveland and back, right? So that's a long flight with air refueling and stuff, and you'd come back, and then he'd say, oh, go land at these coordinates. And we go over there and shut down. And there'd be a vehicle waiting for you with an envelope. Here's the conditions. You've been shot down behind enemy lines. You've survived. Here's the coordinates to your, pickup point. Go. And it's like you had to disable the aircraft. We had some procedures to do that. Depending on what was going on, you might just take the engine condition levers out, so the aircraft can't be started at all. And it's almost the equivalent of taking the battery out of a car. You can't start it. But in this case, we were doing the auto destruct of the mission computers, and all the ComSec had to be zeroed and all this other stuff. And we had 7 radios, for God's sake. You got to zero all that stuff. And there's like one switch that does it, but there's always a possibility it didn't do it. So then you got to go, all right, we did that. Now I'm going to take the time to go through each individual one and get it. I actually got a coin from the NSA. About a year later, they read my after action review and realized that I had zeroed all the ComSec and done everything I was supposed to. And they sent me a citation, thanks.
That's awesome.
NSA, and here's a coin. And so that was neat. But anyway, so we hit the ground, and I'm like, crap, not another Gorst game, another shoot down scenario. This one's real. So we pull up, engines offline, hit the rotor brake, zero all the stuff. And now we're out on the ground, and I'm with the SEALs, and my air crew are out. We're in like a little perimeter. I'm running back and forth, trying to make sure everybody's okay and that they're, they've got a sector of responsibility. And then I get down on my knees, and I'm like, I got a map laid out. My GPS is on, finding itself. And I'm trying to get a set of coordinates of where we are. And the SEALs are doing the same thing, except they're looking at this mountain off to the left, and they're like, all right, let's get together. Let's get a route. Let's go to the top. And I walk over, and I'm like, what are you doing? We're going to go to the top of the mountain. I go, it's 3 minutes of flight that way, which is like 10 miles. And he's like, no, that's it right there. I'm like, no. I pull my map out, like, that's this mountain. This is where we were. And he's like, oh crap, maybe, so basically my flight was about 3 minutes. Each quart of hydraulic fluid lasted about 50 seconds. And if we had one less can, we wouldn't have survived. And if we had one more, I might have pushed it further, which probably would have ended bad. Everything fell into place for us. But so there we're on the ground. AC-130 rolls overhead. Air Force controller John Chapman is talking to him. Him and the SEAL team leader both ended up with the Medal of Honor for this mission, for later on in the mission. But eventually the wingman, Razor 04, comes in to get us. And I tell you, I've rescued a lot of people in my years and done CASEVACs, and I know what that sound is like. It's super quiet, and all of a sudden you hear the double-headed dumpster coming in, and it's a very unique sound. It's got a little bit of transmission whine to it. And he came in, picked us up. They were going to they couldn't take us all to the top of the mountain. It's too high, and he didn't have the aircraft performance. So my air crew was going to stay on the ground while the SEALs went up, got them, then they come back and get us. But there supposedly was enemy forces moving toward us, and the AC-130 was going to take them out. I think it actually was 101st guys, but that would have been another fratricide incident. Yeah. But anyway, they decided to take us off the ground, and they put us over at Gardez, and then Razor 04 took them back to the top of the mountain. And then that's their whole thing with the Medals of Honor and the Rangers and all that stuff. But and his aircraft was shot to pieces. He came back with no gas. He shut it down. There was no gas register on the fuel gauge. You couldn't see any in the tank. The APU flamed out. So that in itself was why there was confusion back at Bagram. They found out the aircraft was out of gas, so they tried to send a Fat Cow, which is a Chinook with an internal tank and hoses, to refuel them. And then I get on the phone after a while and say, hey, look, don't send fuel. That aircraft is not flyable. It won't even start, let alone fly. And like, oh, okay. And that's where, like, different books that you read, it's like, well, we didn't know why we were taking the fuel tanks off and why we were putting them on. And it's because there was no reason to. Yeah. And then when Razor 04 is coming down to get me, Razor 01, he's the guy that ended up on top of Takugar. Very similar, his shoot down to mine, except I was maybe 50 to 75 feet forward of where he was. Had he been hit in the same spot I was, he could have done the same thing, dove down the mountain. Instead, he was on the upslope. So he came in and landed and kind of pancaked in. But that was kind of that. And then the next night, so everybody gets rescued eventually. Their enemy coming to Gardez, the FOB, and this was like something out of a movie for me, in that, there's like a SEAL team E8, an E4 engineer from 10th Mountain, a weather guy from the Air Force, and a couple of CIA guys doing their thing. And we were going to defend this thing. It looked like the Alamo. So you had two air crews. Now, we were heavily armed. We had two M60s that were non-electric. We had AT4s. We all had long guns and a lot of ammunition and grenades. And so the SEAL team leader that owned the base was walking us around planning the defense, and we were doing like range cards and all the basic stuff. And he's like, hey, here's the deal. We'll fight as long as we can. The force that's coming far outnumbers us. They're going to get to us, and they're going to try to come through the big gate. And then the E4 from 10th Mountain rigged the back wall with explosives, and we lined up all the vehicles, these little Toyota Tacomas, and they were going to blow the wall. We'd go out the back while they were trying to come in the front door. And then my job was to crawl into the ammo pit, which was just a ditch with a canvas tarp over it and a lot of ammo. And they put a satchel charge in there with a little, ringed fuse. And my job was to crawl into the tarp, pull the fuse, get out, and I'd jump in the last vehicle and we'd go, and they'd get in and boom, kind of thing. Except eventually an AC-130 was dispatched, dissuaded them from coming our way, and they just retreated, and we didn't have to do that. Thank God. Yeah. Jeez. But that was a part of the story that, I think of a lot, and then,
the next night, no less.
Well, that was that night, actually.
The same night?
Yeah. So then the next night, a blizzard is coming in, and it's going to be there 5 or 6 days. And so all of the coalition forces that we'd placed on the mountains had to come out, right? Because they weren't supplied for a blizzard, and they're like, nah, they'll die if they stay up there. So they got to come out. So our 3rd battalion had just got in country and just built up their Chinooks. And they came up to assist us with the rescue of the guys on Tarkogar. And now the next night, they don't have enough aircraft to go get everybody out in one lift. So they still need one of the Echo models. And that morning, our guys, the Echoes, had gone out on a vehicle interdiction. They thought they had Bin Laden. It turned out to be not. But they had all flown. And the only crew that hadn't flown was me and
Wow.
the guy. So they're like, Al, can you join the 3rd Battalion guys and go up and get everybody out? They got to come out. I'm like, all right. So this is the first time I've flown since I got shot down. And I'm going to pick up the Germans, the German Special Forces. And while we're getting ready to go, they call in and they say they're surrounded by armed Taliban with RPGs. Right. And I'm like, and that's my landing zone. So I go to the AC 130 liaison. He's like, Colonel. And I'm like, sir, you gotta kill the bad guys. He's like, I can't do it. We don't know that they're bad. And I'm like, well, the guys on the ground are saying they have eyes on them. I said, just tell them to illuminate their, IR strobes and kill everything within 200 meters of it. And he's like, I can't, and it's because of the fratricide, a couple days before. And I was pissed. I was like, you've got to do it. I'm going to the same conditions I got shot down in, except now I know they're there. And he's like, I can't do it. He says, if they shoot at you, we'll take them out. Right. Once again, it's very chivalrous to be shot at first. And so we're going along. I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do. And I'm like, all right, we're just going to do it. We're in God's hands at this point. And the Air Force. And then the AC-130, now you've seen this, I'm sure. The AC-130 says, hey, we got to break station. We got to get back to Qatar, by daylight. I'm like, but I'm 2 minutes out. You telling me you can't hang out for 5 minutes to cover me, do the infill, pick up and leave? Nope, we got to go.
Jeez.
To this day, I can't even, that group of guys, there's got to be something that was going on that none of us knew about, but we did not have nice things to say about AC-130s in those days, which is funny because anyway, they did stick around. My co-pilot actually shamed them into it, which
okay. So they did. They stayed.
They did. They stayed, and I guess because they're overhead, you can see them and you can hear them, at those elevations. So they did not shoot at us, and we left, and everything was hunky dory. But so here I am, badmouthing the ACs, right? But a year or so later, I'm in Iraq, and the ACs were amazing, and from there on out, I think that fratricide really kind of set everybody kind of off their normal game. So they made decisions they probably wouldn't have made otherwise.
How did you process the fact that you nearly died that night? It sounds like you didn't have time to even think about it, but like the moments that you had to rest or to reflect on it, you're pre-flighting the next aircraft within 24 hours.
Yeah, it was
like, had you talked to any of your, I don't know, the other guys at the unit, anything?
Yeah. I was kind of like, we were all in the same boat. Keep in mind, this is the same group of people we started with. And in the very beginning, we didn't think we'd survive more than 3 or 4 missions. I mean, that's not being boisterous. We honestly didn't think we'd survive. So to get that far, we were kind of numb. And then this kind of shook everybody up because I did ask a couple of guys if they wanted to go out on the mission to get all the next night. And everybody's like, I don't think so. Not if you don't need me. And I was like, all right. So I went and got one of the other flight leads, again, Ahmed, who I was like, hey, Ahmed, you want to go with me and get the guys off the mountains? He's like, hell yeah, let's go, and okay. And I wasn't so, when the aircraft started and the blades started turning, I had like a feeling of dread, I mean, I can't even describe the, like goosebumps and this is not good, and it's almost like in the movie Top Gun, the original, where Maverick comes back after the flat spin crash that kills his Rio, and he gets in another flat spin or in the same conditions, and he's like, it's no good, and he breaks contact. That's how I felt. And then like something kicks in and it's like, okay, Mavericks re-engaging, sir, in a
Yeah.
back in the game. But we left country. Our sister company was coming in to RIP, relief in place, and we couldn't leave until Anaconda happened. So when it got extended 2 weeks, we had to stay. So our guys were on the way in, and they came in, and we did our handover, and I got to go back to the States. And then the way I dealt with it was bourbon, and I didn't sleep. It was terrible for a couple of months, and I actually went to the psychologist and said, "Hey, look, I'm
That's
drinking
pretty
myself to
remarkable
sleep."
for that time.
Yeah,
Kudos to you, man.
yeah,
Jeez.
but I just couldn't do it. The dreams every night were Neil Roberts, because when I got rescued, when they pulled everybody off the mountain and I got on those aircraft, I sat leg to leg with Neil Roberts, right? Because he was on the floor. He was one of the last people loaded, and I was the last person on the aircraft, and I sat down on the floor next to him, and it was really eerie because he still had all his stuff. Like, people were talking about the Taliban had done all these terrible things to him. They shot him in the head, and he still had his watch and his compass and all that stuff, and the luminous hands, his wrist was moving like this with the aircraft vibrations. And I was just sitting there going, my imagination in the green light was like, is he alive? And he had damage to him that was obvious he wasn't alive, but that dream would come back every night unless I drank it away. So I knew I had to get some help. I went to the shrink and was like, "Hey, can you tell me, based on my psychological profile when I joined the 160th, did I behave the way I should have?" And he looked the records over, and he's like, "Well, the tests don't really tell us that kind of stuff. They really exclude people more than include." But he goes, "I will tell you, you have in your psychological profile, there's like a graph, right? And on the graph, there's these dots, that represent values, numerical values. And if you draw a line between these things, Night Stalkers all kind of have the same thing. But in the Night Stalkers, there's still guys that are a little more aggressive and guys who aren't. The guys that are like the normal Night Stalker that you would think of, in stereotype, have a check mark, in the if you draw a line between these data points, and I don't remember what points were high and low, but the low point of the check mark was that you didn't care about getting in trouble, right? And here's what I mean by that: the other guys had everything the same except that low point was up, and those guys, though they still had all the other attributes, were more concerned that they were screwing up an aircraft. So, for example, we had a guy in a Black Hawk. He was browned out down in Fort Lewis, not Fort Polk, and he picked up to a hover. He had too many Rangers on board. The rotor droop, bitch and Betty's going low rotor, low rotor, low rotor, and there was an error. He didn't have low rotor, and so he, instead of kind of assessing the situation, realizing that if he didn't get out of the dust, that he'd crash, he crashed in not making the decision quick enough. And then when asked afterwards, he said, "Well, I was afraid of getting in trouble because I damaged the aircraft." And so he told me that he's like, "You're one of the guys that, you're what we're looking for." And he goes, "The fact that you knew you needed help is probably all you need." He said, "If I were you, I'd just, play it by ear." And I literally, that night, I didn't have to drink. I went to sleep, and the dreams went away. And I went and I told all my friends, all my peers, I was like, "Guys, you got to go," because I know, based on the conversations in the pilot area, you guys are fucked up.
You're all dealing with
talk to
this.
them, right? And so they wouldn't do it. So I talked to the commander, and I asked him to make them go. And then he made it mandatory. Everybody had to go talk for an hour or so. And I've heard of other, like the SEALs doing this, and everybody stayed. Nobody gave them the, in the movies, "I'm fine." Everybody talked.
I interviewed Mike Hayes, who's one of the SEALs that was around it, and had all the guys go and see, like brought the shrinks in so they couldn't avoid it. And like, everybody's doing it, so don't feel like you're singled out.
Yeah. So you're not the loser.
Jesus.
It's like everybody, and it helped everybody, and that's the one thing I've learned out of all these years, is that talking about it with somebody who can understand is a good thing.
Yeah.
So it can't just be somebody who doesn't relate. You're like, I flew in with my hair on fire. Why would you do that? Never mind, I'm not talking to you.
You're like, did you do bumper hitching once? Because if you did, you understand me.
Hey, there you go.
Basically.
There you go.
So I've taken up a ton of your time, Al. Just a couple questions here.
Yeah.
I try to ask two questions to everybody that I interview.
Yeah.
So the first is, was there anything that you carried with you when you were in combat, flying, or just kept it at wherever you were sleeping, that had sentimental value to you, something that somebody gave you, maybe like a little good luck charm?
Answer is no. An absolute no. Part of the reason was in the very beginning of Enduring Freedom, we didn't know what we were going to experience, so we just didn't bring anything. Everything was very sterile. When Anaconda happened, one of the crew chiefs on Razor 01 was killed on the infill, and the air mission commander, a guy named Don Tavron, he's got a heart as big as a Volkswagen, and he noticed that Phil was laying out on the snow, and everybody knew he was deceased, but his wedding band was visible, and Don low crawled under machine gun fire, very heavy concentrated machine gun fire, to get that ring back, because they didn't know if anybody was going to survive, if they'd have to leave the bodies behind, any of that kind of stuff. So he got the ring, and when they came off the mountain, they consolidated all the effects in an ammo can. They locked it up. Well, that stuff didn't follow the normal process, because remember, this is still kind of in the early days, in that process of getting artifact, personal effects back is different, right? So the stuff goes back on a C-17. It ends up in the safe in the company, and his wife hears that the wedding ring was recovered, and she wants it. She wants it bad, and she's mad, and she thinks somebody stole it, right? And these accusations are flying. Who stole, Phil's wedding ring? And Don hears about it. He's in the hospital, and then he hears about it. He's like, I collected it. I know I did. He doesn't know it's in this ammo can. And eventually somebody figures it out. They open it up, they give him the ring. And I decided that I would never bring anything that could potentially put somebody's life at risk, and trying to regain my wedding ring or something. So we had this little ceremony. Every time I left, I'd give my wife my wedding ring, and she'd cry. And I mean, as soon as she saw it, she'd start bawling. But yeah, no, I never brought anything.
Oh man, no, it's completely understandable. And then the last thing that I try to ask everybody is, especially looking back at what you went through, and I know we only scratched the surface, so that's why like Razor 3 gets into a lot of the details around other events. But I can't imagine how many times you nearly died. But as you look back on those moments and the decades that you spent in service, would you go back and do that again?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. I was just asked this yesterday. I did a little speaking engagement, and somebody asked me that. And I was like, yeah, I would. I mean, you got to remember the time frame. I mean, even if it hadn't been after 9/11, we all wanted to be in the fight, and we were volunteered. It's in the creed. I volunteered to fight with, be up front when the fighting is difficult. Well, it's true. We all wanted to be in there and do it. And when 9/11 happened, you just got to remember what that felt like. The gut wrenching feeling of watching people jump off the top of that building, and we're going to take the fight to the bad guys. And back then, we thought that we could make a difference and that the fight would be over. I mean, we expected 6, 7 months done, right? Not 10.
I mean, you had seen Desert Storm. You were there. You saw.
Right.
So,
and that's what we thought it was going to be. And it wasn't. And the only thing I would have done different is I didn't understand work-life balance. For me, it was just all deploy, 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 volunteer, volunteer, do stuff. Family will suck it up. And it took its toll on my wife. And this is probably, we should have talked about this a lot sooner, but if you're reading the book, you can find that, when I shoot down, and Anaconda actually started a role with alcohol and prescription pain medications, opioids, that ended up in her death, which is why I left the 160th. I needed to change a venue, and I came up to West Point. But she put up with it for 10 years, and she told me what I wanted to hear. Are you going to be okay? Yes. And if I tried to quit, she'd say, if you quit, I'm the failure. It's my fault. And so I just kind of went along. And I would now, in hindsight, have, made some adjustments there, but.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that. And I had read a little bit about that as well. And I had interviewed Derek Natalini, who's a former Delta operator recently. And when I asked him the same question, he said something very similar. And he goes, the only thing I would do different is I would go home and have dinner with my family every night when I'm
Yes.
back home,
Actually,
instead
I
of
heard
like
that. I
staying
heard
at the
that
range.
podcast. Yeah, it's the same thing. We would, because I was a flight lead, because I was one of the senior flight leads. People were always looking to me, and it's funny because back at the compound, or even at the other compounds, Navy and Delta, my name gets thrown around like I was some. It's embarrassing to say, but oh, he's a legend. It's like, well, really, why? And the stories, the mustache, the stories
Yeah,
just
I
get
know. We didn't even touch on
better.
the
It's like a
mustache. Yeah.
it's like a fish story, it just gets better and better. It's like, no, I didn't actually do that, and but it just keeps building, and I guess I can't complain. At least it's not building in a bad way. It's building,
It's true.
where the mustache, they used to joke that the mustache told me what to do. Would be like, they would joke and say, like it was like, pull power, turn right, slow down. It was like, these are the crew chiefs making fun of me, and it was like, damn, I didn't realize. So yeah, I
God.
enjoyed it. People ask me all the time. They'll say, "Thank you for your service." I'll say, "You know what? I enjoyed almost all of it."
Yeah.
And by almost, I mean almost every bit of it. There was some bad stuff that happened, but we were all volunteers, and we thought we were going to make a difference, and we did. I mean, we kept the fight from coming to America, I guess. But when I watched the country fall in the summer, there was a Chinook there from the 160. They flew in a single Chinook that went outside the wire a couple of times, and then it just became untenable, and they didn't do it. But it's just interesting, to watch. I got there. There was not a single cultural bit of lighting in the country.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And then it was like a freaking city, everywhere you went. And then now it's probably back the way it was. It's terrible.
It is really sad to see the turn that direction. God.
Yeah. But on a good note, I know we're wrapping up here.
Yep.
You can read about some of this stuff, and especially the family issues, which a lot of people, especially with the opioid epidemic that's going on now, we were kind of at the leading edge of it with my wife. And so I do volunteer with some organizations to try to help with that kind of stuff. And not so much to stop it, but to help the family members, to realize that they can't fix it, but what can you do? So that kind of stuff.
The book's also got great reviews online, like close to a 5-star rating, which is no joke. So I do suggest people take a look at this. And it's, again, there just aren't a lot of stories about Night Stalkers.
No, there's not. You get Black Hawk Down, you get In the Company of Heroes from Mike Durant, and Night Stalkers from Mike Durant, and that's kind of it. There's another one. There is one an AH guy just wrote.
Greg Coker. Yeah.
What is that, like Six Guns Don't Miss or something?
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, there really aren't that many. But
yeah.
And let me tell you, this was a process getting it through the DoD.
Oh, I bet.
I was, one of those guys who, if they ever had reporters come, I was one of the people that was allowed to talk to them. So I was given briefings and training, and I kind of knew what I could and couldn't say. So I tried to do that in the book. The DoD guys were a little hefty on the pen there. They're like, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with saying that. Whatever. It took like 9 months. So.
As if it's not hard enough to write a book anyway, but then to go through that. So, Jesus. Well, thanks so much, Alan. This was super fun for me. Just I don't know, reliving some of the aviation days and hearing these stories and Bitch and Betty and these other things that I hadn't heard in a while. And I think people are really going to enjoy just getting into detail on the airframe and what it's like being in the cockpit doing some of these things. So thank you very much.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it, and I really enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed that combat story. As you all know, I love speaking with former aviators. Just brings back a lot of memories for me, and some of the details of the things we talk about I had forgotten about. And even the voice that's talking to you in the cockpit when things are going wrong, it brings back some crazy memories that make me smile now, but I was not smiling at the time, I promise you that. So let's dive into just a couple listener comments. We've got a first one. It's a YouTube comment on the Jake Wood interview. It's from Tim Dunn. It says, Ryan, this is my first viewed podcast podcast of yours. Not that you need any strokes from some random dude on the internet, but I really enjoy your style, the thoughtful questions you ran by Jake. Subscribed. I really appreciate it. You know, what we do is really something that I just enjoy myself, and hearing these stories. The questions are easy to ask with people with these backgrounds. But thank you for taking the time to leave that, Tim, taking the time to listen and subscribing. We've got some good ones coming up as well, so I'm glad you did. And then we've also got a comment on the Billy Billingham interview, YouTube comment. And this interview has gotten a lot of traction. This is from Fish and Hunt. It says, guys like Billy are the kind of guys you want beside you when shit is going down. Great interview. Thumbs up. And it's funny. People really loved this particular interview, as did I. It's great getting some of the foreigners on here. Although I will say the Brits don't feel like that much for foreigners when how closely we work together. But I will say for Billy, if y'all noticed, for those who listened, he mentioned that his show that he was doing globally was going to be coming to the US, and it has. It's on Fox now. You probably heard commercials during some football games. It's him talking. It's pretty cool. So check it out as you have time to see him and a few other Tier 1 operators run some celebrities and regular folks through that type of intense Tier 1 training. It's well worth a look. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for listening to this. And we got more to come. So stick around. Thank you all. Stay safe.